Hello, Khenpo. I am a Buddhist researcher at the Shanxi Academy of Social Sciences. I am also a student at Professor Lee's Buddhist Research Institute. PhD graduates, I actually have a question for you. I have not studied Tibetan because we were talking about the afterlife. You are inevitably in conflict with your past life. In Christian thought and in the concepts of contemporary cosmology and physics, the universe has an origin. People always tend to assume that there is a concept of the very earliest point in time. We are quite familiar with the well-known saying in Han Buddhism that there is in fact no beginning. I would like to ask Khenpo a question. In Tibetan Buddhism, especially in the Abhidharma text, how is the arising of ignorance discussed as well as the earliest of previous lives? Is there any concept similar to a first life? Thank you.
Our current life, you could say, does have an end. But as for the beginning, because it is so incredibly long ago, relevant Buddhist texts often speak of samsara as being without beginning. Some scholars believe that at the very start, the very first life of humanity was in a state of indeterminate karma. This state is actually often compared to empty space as a metaphor. But it is not exactly the same as empty space. It's a state of indeterminacy. There is also another view that there was no beginning at all, because it is without origin. Another view is that there was a beginning, but this beginning is not recorded in history. It is only called without beginning because the time span is so vast. So I believe that it's not just our lives, but in fact everything in the world has its own causes and conditions. But there is a scholar who said, the original cause is not that important. What really matters is to walk the path before us well.
Hello, Master. I am an undergraduate student at Northwest University. I would like to ask you 2 questions. The first is, we always seem to wait until the end of our lives to look back and only then understand the regrets in our lives. Can the regrets of this life be made up for in the next life? But by then the physical body is gone and memories of the previous life no longer exist. How can we understand the debts we owe from past lives? And how can we know what the main task of this life is? How can we attain true meaning in life and become a spiritual being? My second question is, who decides a person's next life and their fate? Why are some people's lives happy, while others are filled with suffering and confusion? Thank you.
First, for most of us, some people only realize at the end of their lives that many of the things they did throughout their lives were wrong. There are also some people who never realize this, even at the very end. No matter what, in the long journey of life, some of us are aware of the good and bad deeds we've done in the past, while others are not. Whether we know or not, when we take responsibility for ourselves, we should treat life kindly. There are 2 ways to treat life kindly. The first way is to do good deeds for all sentient beings, for all forms of life. This is the highest level. If it's the middle level, it's doing good deeds for oneself. If it's the lower level, at least refrain from harming other living beings. Because all life is as incredibly precious as my own. In this way, many of the wrongs committed in the past can actually be remedied. One can also, according to Tibetan or Han Buddhism, make up for the karma accumulated in a lifetime through confession and repentance. Through repentance, one can purify the negative karma and sins committed in the past. Second, who decides a person's next life? According to Christianity, as well as some other religious sects and belief systems, it is decided by God or by a supreme being. There are various explanations. But according to Buddhism, it is actually not decided by anyone else. If there were a true creator, and he decided that this person should be happy and that person should suffer, that wouldn't be very fair either. Because if I haven't done anything wrong, yet he makes me suffer, or if I haven't done anything good, yet he lets me be happy every day. Because for each of us, we care deeply about our own happiness and suffering. These are questions that need to be examined. But I think the most important thing is what Buddhism teaches. If you do good deeds, you will always be happy. If you do bad deeds, you will always suffer. At first, this concept might not be easily accepted by some young people, but actually this is very important. For example, the seeds we plant, if they are poisonous, will yield poisonous fruit. If they are medicinal, they will yield medicinal fruit. You reap what you sow. This is a philosophy often used by the ancients. This philosophy is also especially recognized in Buddhism. So everyone here, if you want to be happy in this life and in future lives, even to be happy life after life, then try your best not to kill or commit other harmful acts. If in this life you commit a great deal of negative karma, then in this life or the next, or even the life after that, you will inevitably experience suffering. Therefore, in this life, why are some people happy while others are suffering? It is because of the karma we created in our past lives. This is what Buddhism calls the profound mystery of cause and effect. In Tibetan Buddhism, there is a master called the Venerable Jigme. He gave a very good analogy. What is this analogy? For example, when a great Garuda is soaring in the sky, its shadow is temporarily invisible. But when it descends to the ground, its shadow immediately appears. Similarly, when a person does bad deeds or creates negative karma, it is not immediately apparent. In fact, this person is inseparably followed by this karma at all times. When the right conditions come together, only then will their suffering or happiness manifest. So this is a very profound principle. I especially hope that all the scholars present here will often reflect on the concept of cause and effect. Nowadays, many people lack an understanding of cause and effect. As long as they themselves are well fed, they don't care about those around them. This is a particularly frightening social phenomenon.
Hello, Khenpo. I'm a Buddhist enthusiast, you could say. I have personally read some Buddhist scriptures. I'm also particularly interested in the theory of reincarnation. Just like what Teacher Lee said earlier, this cycle of reincarnation is indeed very important. I think one aspect is this cycle of reincarnation. It is closely related to each and every one of us. Whether or not reincarnation exists, whether or not there is an afterlife, is a major issue that concerns the vital interests of each of us. Another point is that the theory of reincarnation is also a fundamental concept in Buddhism. If there were no reincarnation, then all the other Buddhist theories could be said to be built on nothing, like castles in the air with no foundation at all. So I am also genuinely very interested in this particular theory. Now, regarding the argumentation or the logical proof of reincarnation, I think Khenpo just mentioned some relevant cases as well. At present, this kind of proof seems to be based on case studies. Personally, I feel that cases are always somewhat limited in their scope, and they are never truly universal. And even though we've now found 20,000 or even tens of thousands of cases compared to the population of the world, that's still a very small number. So relying solely on cases makes it difficult to convince people, or rather the general public. In order to make the majority of people truly and genuinely convinced by the theory of reincarnation, I think we still might need some clear and rational forms of proof, or perhaps some theoretical evidence to make up for this particular shortcoming. I would like to ask Khenpo if there are any teachings or explanations on this specific aspect.
Actually, our current theories are established in two ways. One type of theory is established through argumentation, like logical reasoning and inference. Logical reasoning and inference in the context of Tibetan Buddhist pramana, Buddhist logic. As I just mentioned, this kind of inference in pramana uses the reasoning of the continuity of the mind's final moment of existence. This is the sharpest and most fundamental method of reasoning. So, when this reasoning cannot be refuted, the theory is already established. Therefore, there is no need for a lot. This is one form of reasoning. The second type of reasoning is what we now call case studies. Case studies, in fact, as we have discussed previously, if you are unable to effectively refute them, then the case is already established. Although these are case studies, we still have to acknowledge them. For example, Dr. Tucker collected these cases. He didn't just talk about these important topics, he actually created a database. He used rigorous statistical and scientific methods to analyze the database. When conducting the analysis, although in terms of the number of people, especially nowadays, as I just mentioned, back in the Tang dynasty, Xi'an had a population of 1 million. With a population of 1 million, that's a very large number of people. With so many people in this area, it's really quite safe to say that, look, with such a large and diverse population, it's impossible that there wouldn't be Buddhists who don't believe in past and future lives. Among us Buddhists, that's simply not possible. It just wouldn't happen. But in this era, many things have changed. This is also mentioned in the Buddhist scriptures. It's very likely that in this century, in the 21st century, most people do not believe in Buddhism. But if there is a king or a president of a country, or if someone like that believes in Buddhism, then we humans are especially prone to change. And then all of a sudden it's very likely that everyone could change as well. So if we try to prove the existence of a truth based on the number of people who believe in it, in reality, that's not necessarily very accurate. For example, scientists, if you look at the proportion, they are a very small minority. It's not as if everyone graduating from Northwestern University now will all become scientists, or that every single person will become a discoverer of truth. That's impossible. In this world, pure gold is extremely rare, and truth is also very hard to discover. So, when it comes to these kinds of mysterious, profound truths, we should say that they are not something that many people can immediately discover. Therefore, the argument that something is invalid just because few people know it does not hold. In our society, we do not accept that reasoning, what I just mentioned. One point is that our establishment should be free from any faults or objections. In Buddhist logic, this is called objection or fault. If there are no such objections, then we have no choice but to accept it. When it comes to accepting something, just because many people believe it doesn't necessarily make it the truth. Even now, there are many truths that are especially valuable, and even among intellectuals, there are many phenomena that they have not discovered. So we may need to continue to observe and investigate further. I also sincerely hope that what I just mentioned, which I personally find meaningful, can be discussed with some geshes from Tibetan Buddhism, since they are all skilled in debate. In a truly rational debate, if it's a rational debate, perhaps we can meet face to face and set aside some time. True insights can only emerge through mutual debate.
Hello, Khenpo. I am a graduate student at the Institute of Ideology. I am also interested in Buddhism. There are two questions here. This is also what I usually think about, but there are still some things I can't figure out. I would like to ask you for advice here. The first question is, Buddhism teaches the doctrine of no self in persons and no self in phenomena, the twofold no self. There is no self in persons, nor is there a self in phenomena. If you cling to the existence of a self, that is the source of suffering. In other words, it is the root of your distress. But in the doctrine of samsara, there is a subject of rebirth. It seems that the existence of a self is necessary for this subject of rebirth to be established. So, the earlier teaching of no self and the later idea of a self, are these two in contradiction? If not, how can they be reconciled? The second question is, if we go back several hundred or even several thousand years on the world or on Earth or even in the entire universe, there may have only been 1 billion people. But in the present day, there are already 6 or 7 billion people living on Earth. If the doctrine of reincarnation is true, then why are there more and more people? Where did all these extra souls come from? All right, thank you.
As for your first question, you said, Buddhism teaches no self in persons and no self in phenomena, yet also speaks of a center of self in the existence of reincarnation. Actually, there's no contradiction here at all. When Shakyamuni Buddha turned the Dharma wheel for the second time, he spoke of the eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body, and said that all phenomena do not truly exist. They are empty in nature. But during the first turning of the Dharma wheel, he spoke of the self of I seeking liberation, that I am suffering, that the root of suffering is affliction, and that afflictions are eliminated through wisdom. This is something in Buddhism that you might only understand after systematic study. But if I were to give you a general explanation, that is to say, from the ultimate truth of all phenomena, the so-called self and all the things I cling to do not exist. This means that in the ultimate sense, in the true reality, they do not exist. But before reaching such a realization, both the self and any phenomena, including samsara, suffering, liberation, and the pure land, all truly exist. We sentient beings are like people dreaming. In the dream, everything seems real, but when we wake up, nothing remains. Last night, when you were dreaming, there was happiness in the dream, and there was suffering in the dream. In order to attain happiness in the dream, you also needed to eliminate the suffering in the dream at that time. But when you wake up today and look back, everything that existed in last night's dream is now gone, and nothing from that dream remains. In fact, this is not contradictory. We sentient beings are dreaming, and within the dream, things do exist. But after you wake up from the dream, they no longer exist. So this principle, according to the Buddhist teachings on emptiness and appearance, after a period of study, can become very easy to understand. Moreover, this principle is especially important. Why did the Buddha say that the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body do not exist? They truly do not exist. When we now examine the self, we cannot find it. This inability to find it is not just a matter of something generally existing, but being unfindable. When we truly use the Madhyamaka reasoning of Chandrakirti and Nagarjuna, we cannot find it through such analysis. However, within deluded appearances, it should exist. So, regarding this issue, perhaps after studying Madhyamaka and the Abhidharma Kosha, as well as other treatises, you will fully understand it. The relationship between existence and non-existence is not contradictory at all. Moreover, to explain it this way is very reasonable. If you don't explain it like this, in fact, there are many issues that we simply cannot clarify. That's how it is. Now, the second question, on our planet Earth, it was recently discovered that the human population has reached 7 billion. Actually, from the perspective of Buddhist thought, this is not surprising at all. Because sentient beings are innumerable and boundless, and so-called sentient beings are not all human beings. There are sentient beings in other places as well, and there are countless worlds. So, the Buddhist worldview is quite different from our ordinary worldview. There are still certain differences, including with the current universe and world as we know it. There are countless worlds and also innumerable sentient beings. Some sentient beings in other worlds, after having performed various virtuous deeds in the past, attain a human body and are reborn in this world, and then, when this earth is destroyed, when this world exists again, they may be in other worlds. At present, humans have only discovered Earth and the Moon. At this time, this is what we can observe with our naked eyes. On a higher level, as Buddhism describes, the Saha world contains 3,000 great thousand worlds. These 3,000 great thousand worlds represent an incredibly vast number. If I explain it to you all at once, you might feel a bit anxious and not agree with it. But even if you don't agree, in fact, we still have to mention this Buddhist perspective. If, according to Buddhism, there were only this many humans, then where did all these people come from? Did they fall from the sky, or did they grow out of the ground? We can put it this way. Actually, there's no need to overthink it. Life consists of countless sentient beings who, depending on their own karma, some are reborn as humans, while others are reborn as different beings.
Khenpo, hello. I have 2 questions I'd like to ask you. The first question is, I have a friend, she heard from her friend who went to Lhasa. She spun the prayer wheel in the wrong direction, and after coming back, she encountered a lot of obstacles. So now she feels a deep sense of awe and has developed a kind of fear toward Buddhism. And the other question is, right now, there are floods in Thailand, and many people are talking about it. That is a country where Buddhism is widely practiced. Because of this, many people have started to question Buddhism. That's the first question. The second question is, how can we properly and correctly distinguish in practice between Buddhism and cults? Could you clarify the differences between them? How can we gain a more accurate understanding of our Buddhist practice and knowledge? Thank you.
When spinning a prayer wheel, it is generally spun clockwise. If you spin it counterclockwise, it does indeed count as a mistake. In that case, she probably still needs to make amends. If she spun it the wrong way a certain number of times, she should just spin it the correct way the same number of times to make up for it. This is one point. Secondly, although Thailand is a Buddhist holy land, it is normal for disasters to occur there. For example, in the biography of Shakyamuni Buddha, the Shakya clan was also destroyed by King Virudaka at that time. What was the reason? It was because at that time, when the Shakya clan became fishermen, they killed all 80,000 fish. After killing them, all these sentient beings were eventually reborn in King Virudaka's kingdom and destroyed the Shakya clan. Even Shakyamuni Buddha at that time manifested a headache as a result. He was the son of a fisherman then, and when he saw the fish struggling, he laughed at them. Because of this karmic retribution, even when Shakyamuni Buddha attained enlightenment, he manifested pain. There is such a story. With this kind of story, on the surface, Thailand, I've been there before as well. Indeed, Buddhism flourishes in Thailand. However, Thai Buddhism is not truly understood by many people when it comes to the actual Buddhist teachings. Except for some PhD students at top universities and monastics, among the general public, they simply have faith in Buddhism. They often pay respects to monastics and visit temples, but when it comes to genuine faith and wisdom from within, renunciation and bodhicitta, their understanding in these areas is particularly lacking. Basically, it's similar to many places in China nowadays where ordinary people still have some religious faith. Every time there's a Dharma assembly or a Avalokiteshvara day, the place is packed with people. But if you actually interview them and ask whether they understand Buddhism, many might only know, do no evil, practice all good. Some don't even understand that much. Some people even kill mosquitoes while simultaneously worshipping the Buddha. there are cases like this too. So on one hand, why does this situation occur nowadays? It should be due to karma created in previous lives. The Buddhist practices and virtuous actions they perform now, which are beneficial for the future, the causes and effects do not manifest at the same time. Back in the time of Shakyamuni Buddha, even the Shakya kingdom, such a remarkable place, was also the result of karma from previous lives. It's the same for us. If some good people don't receive good rewards, it's not that the good deeds I do now will immediately bear fruit. This issue should be considered in light of past lives. No matter where you are, there will always be some negative conditions. As long as there were negative causes in the past, it's natural for such results to appear in this life. That's how it happens. This is one aspect. Secondly, in the world, there are also various things related to Buddhism, which on the surface appear to be Buddhism, but in reality are not Buddhism. There are also many cases of people operating under the banner of Buddhism. So how do we distinguish them? The most crucial thing is to study the Dharma. Nowadays, many people, including those in intellectual circles, do not study the Dharma enough. I've often spoken with so-called doctoral and graduate students in religious studies, and I often tell them, if you want to publish a paper and put your name on it, you need to be careful. Otherwise, if you claim to be a doctoral or graduate student, that is someone who is either currently enrolled in or has completed an advanced degree program, but if you are not truly proficient in Buddhist studies, meaning you do not have a solid and comprehensive understanding of its teachings and principles, then what you say in the future may not necessarily be truly meaningful. It might even be full of flaws. This is also possible. So, if we want to distinguish between heretical and orthodox teachings now, we must comprehensively raise the level of Buddhist understanding. Whether you are a monastic or a layperson, nowadays there are a lot of misunderstandings about Buddhism among many people. They are full of wrong views. This is wrong, that is wrong. All of these are wrong views, and right view is actually very rare for many people. Why is that? You could say it has something to do with things like the Cultural Revolution at the time, as well as certain important aspects of the educational system, including various elements of education itself, and also some specific textbooks. So if we want to establish a correct view, we must do so through learning and understanding from multiple perspectives. Only then can we distinguish between true and false.
Respected Khenpo, hello and good day. I am proud to be a member of Shandao Charity. My question is, in the Amitabha Sutra it says, one cannot be born in that land with only a small amount of good roots, merit, and causes and conditions. If good men and women hear of Amitabha Buddha and uphold his name, whether for 1 day, 2 days, up to 7 days, upholding his name with an undistracted mind, near death Amitabha Buddha and holy beings appear. If the mind is clear, rebirth in Amitabha Buddha's land of ultimate bliss follows. When it says one cannot be born there with only a small amount of good roots, merit, and causes and conditions, what are many good roots? What merit counts as abundant, and what causes and conditions are sufficient? What actions and methods truly lead to rebirth in the pure land of ultimate bliss? Thank you, Khenpo.
I think the good roots mentioned here, actually in this sentence, mainly refer to having sincere faith. On the basis of sincere faith, it is explained quite clearly in the Amitabha Sutra. For example, being filial to one's parents and practicing virtuous deeds, not killing, cultivating compassion, these are all kinds of wholesome conditions and virtuous actions. Most fundamentally, according to the Pure Land practices related to Tibetan Buddhism, one must give rise to the unsurpassed bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. Then, one must personally aspire to be reborn in the Pure Land of ultimate bliss. It is essential to contemplate the boundless and immeasurable merits and adornments of Amitabha Buddha. With such faith, even reciting single-mindedly from 1 day up to 7 days, one can attain rebirth there. On the surface, this statement seems especially simple. So, does that mean if I do a 7-day retreat, I can immediately be reborn there? In reality, this may vary depending on one's own spiritual capacity. Why is that? Because we have not properly repented. If we have not truly repented, even if you recite for 7 days, you may not necessarily attain rebirth. Therefore, the great masters of Tibetan Buddhism especially emphasize that one must repent for the negative karma one has created in the past. Actually, if you repent, this is a kind of merit. It is an especially good virtuous route. I often think that if the Pure Land school of Han Buddhism and the Pure Land practices of Tibetan Buddhism can correspond to and learn from each other, it will also create certain favorable conditions for the propagation of the Pure Land school and rebirth in the Western Pure Land of ultimate bliss. Just now, Professor Lee also mentioned this. Although due to time constraints today, I also have a lot to say about rebirth in the Pure Land of ultimate bliss. But today I mainly spent the time on the topic of past and present lives. Later, Professor Lee supplemented our discussion very well from the perspective of dependent origination. In fact, for everyone present, life is indeed very short. I especially hope everyone will look into the Pure Land teachings, especially the Pure Land Contemplation Sutra. The Pure Land Contemplation Sutra for Han Buddhism is now a very favorable condition. Thanks to the kindness of the great masters of previous generations, we now have such a precious Dharma text. We in the Tibetan region do not have this Dharma text, so I feel that the Amitabha Sutra and the so-called 5 sutras and 1 treatise of the Pure Land tradition are things we must truly value. We should not only study them theoretically, but also practice them ourselves in real life. Everyone should recite Amitabha Buddha's name while making aspirations to be reborn in the Pure Land of ultimate bliss. When the time comes for us to depart, if we frequently visualize Amitabha Buddha, then those with the right karmic connection will definitely be reborn there. So, for each of us, this is more important than anything else. When you leave this world, you can't take anything with you. Only by relying on this virtuous route, being reborn in the Pure Land of ultimate bliss is the best outcome. If you truly cannot be reborn in the Pure Land of ultimate bliss, then at the very least do not fall into the realms of hell, hungry ghosts, or animals. Otherwise, it will be extremely painful and terrifying.
Hello there, Khenpo. Good to see you. I am a beginner. However, I have some questions regarding the study and practice of Han and Tibetan Buddhism, and I would like to ask you for your guidance. Chan says Buddhahood comes from seeing your true nature. Tibetan Buddhism says it can be achieved in this life. We are currently quite far from Tibetan region, making it not particularly convenient to study Tibetan Buddhism. We are now practicing the Han Chinese tradition. For example, is there a chance to attain Buddhahood in this lifetime with Zen Buddhism or other Buddhist schools? The second question that we have for today is, if in this lifetime we aspire to attain Buddhahood through the Han tradition, nowadays everyone talks about the Pure Land, and in the Dharma ending age, the focus is on the Pure Land practice. Does that mean we can only practice the Pure Land method, and only after being reborn in the Western Pure Land can we continue to practice and attain Buddhahood?
This reminds me of something from Tibetan region in the past, when the Venerable Milarepa, on the first day he sought refuge with his guru, asked his guru, "Can I attain Buddhahood? And can you take care of all my life and practice issues for me?" Then Milarepa's guru replied to him, saying, "Either you can choose to focus your attention and energy on your spiritual practice, and in that case, I will take responsibility for managing your daily life matters and concerns, or you handle your own daily life, and I'll guide your spiritual practice." Of course, whether you attain Buddhahood depends on your own diligence. Later, Milarepa chose, he felt that relying on a guru was not easy. So he said, "I will take care of my own living conditions, and you teach me the Dharma." Throughout his life, Milarepa was extremely diligent and put in tremendous effort. Later, he did indeed attain realization and achieve the state of Vajradhara Tathagata. Everyone present here should also be aware of this. Whether it's the teachings of Chan Buddhism or Vajrayana, in the ultimate sense, they are actually completely the same. There is no contradiction in this regard. But whether you can attain realization or not ultimately depends on yourself. If, for example, any of the young people present or anyone else here, if you truly put all worldly matters behind you and devote yourself diligently to practice, you will definitely achieve some level of accomplishment. We often look at some of the great predecessors, especially the truly remarkable ones, including Master Xuanzang or Kumarajiva. Of course, perhaps they were ancient Buddhas returning, but from appearances, from their childhood or through various circumstances along the way, they exerted tremendous effort and ultimately manifested such great signs of accomplishment. So, I think there should be differences in many aspects, especially for many of you. If it's difficult to go to Tibetan region, actually, there is no real difference. All the schools are the same. At the beginning, one gives rise to bodhicitta, then accumulates the 2 types of merit along the path, and finally attains the fruition of the form body and the Dharma body. There is no difference at all. It's just that the methods established by the great masters and eminent monks are different. Different paths, same destination, you could put it that way. Second, regarding the Pure Land practice of rebirth, actually in Vajrayana Buddhism, it's not that Vajrayana lacks such practices. There are many methods for this. But most great masters also emphasize the Pure Land practice of rebirth. This is also the case in Han Buddhism. But most importantly, we should view all schools with a pure mind. Moreover, we shouldn't treat it as just an ordinary kind of belief. Nowadays, many Buddhists, including some scholars, regard these Buddhist teachings as just a minor topic, something to be studied within a limited scope. But this kind of topic never becomes the most crucial part of their lives. Maybe it's because I am a Buddhist myself, but I feel that since human life is so precious, we must understand the true teachings of Buddhism. The truths of Buddhism are flawless and unassailable, you could put it that way. It would be such a pity not to study such profound truths. Moreover, these truths truly offer a very complete and comprehensive answer for all of human society. Many confusions can be resolved through Buddhism. Why is it that nowadays, even many scientists in the West are now increasingly turning their attention and interest to the teachings and practices of Buddhism? Actually, there are some very profound reasons for this. You could say there is real significance behind it. Therefore, all intellectuals should not overlook Buddhism, as it offers important insights that can be valuable for thoughtful individuals. In our daily lives, there are often many distractions in our minds, including worries, stress, and constant thoughts that can make it difficult to focus and reflect deeply. Just like a bottle, especially for many of you young people. At the very beginning, there isn't much impurity inside the bottle. At this time, you can simply fill it with the liquid of right view. But for many people, there are old, dirty sediments that have been inside for a long time. No matter how much you try to wash it, you can't get them out. As soon as you pour in new knowledge, it immediately gets contaminated again. That's why it's so hard to change these old ways of thinking. So we especially hope that many of you young people can have a positive and genuine understanding of Buddhism. With this understanding, you won't be easily tainted by many wrong views in the future. Otherwise, it would be a real pity.
You didn't answer my question directly. Please give a direct answer. In this life, one must practice Pure Land and ensure rebirth there. That is the safest way. Or if it's possible that I make a vow in this lifetime that I will become a Buddha.
This is because of you. Didn't I just say that? Whether you attain Buddhahood immediately in this lifetime or go to the Pure Land first depends on you. Liberation depends on oneself. I have already answered directly, but you haven't grasped the meaning behind my words.
Hello, Khenpo. I am a graduate student majoring in applied psychology. I'm very glad to have caught this last opportunity. What I want to ask is if we have a certain possibility, for example, using hypnosis to know the specific details of our past lives, then what is the significance of this specific awareness of our past lives for our present life?
All right, actually this is very simple, because for example, from a young age, some people are especially fond of music, while others are particularly passionate about writing. Some people are especially passionate about other fields of expertise. According to what is stated, as described in the Buddhist scriptures, there are related documented cases and well-reasoned arguments that show they did such things in their past lives. Based on these things, we can judge or determine the significance for our future lives. So this reminds me, Marxist dialectical materialism also says the same thing. It says that the true internal cause of matter determines the subsequent emergence of matter, while external causes cannot produce the real decisive significance for what comes after. It only plays a certain role in shaping its appearance. So, many of you here today, the kind of major you choose in this life, and the more meaningful role you play in any given project, are actually closely related to the habits, tendencies, and seeds that have been formed and accumulated from your previous lives, experiences, and existences. The same principle applies. Any virtuous or unwholesome actions we perform in this life will also have a decisive impact on our future lives. Therefore, taking this opportunity, I especially hope that both the teachers and students present here will use the right perspective to observe all things, including the phenomena of life, the material world, the universe, and so on. In this way, in the future, we will understand what to accept and what to reject in this life, and be happy in future lives as well. Of course, due to time constraints today, perhaps many students, I see that so many of you are extremely enthusiastic, which is actually very good because in the school everyone has a sense of initiative and there is an atmosphere of interaction. Moreover, the cultural atmosphere here in all aspects is very strong and truly exceptional. Thank you all so much.